In the courtyard, the caravanserai had once been a place of silk merchants, travelers, and pilgrims. Now it stood hollow and wrong, its courtyard swallowed in shadow, its balconies sagging like tired eyelids. Even the stars above seemed reluctant to look upon it. Percival sat upon the broken fountain, tail wrapped neatly about his paws, the great moon of the dreamlands reflected in his golden eyes. When he spoke, his voice was soft, but it seemed to come from very far away.
Once caravans came here from cities that no longer exist, carrying silks woven from spider dreams and spices harvested from the gardens of the moon. They traded in stories, not gold. Gold is heavy, but stories travel well.
Arabella stood at the base of the stairway, her fingers tracing a delicate sigil in the air. By thorn and briar, root and ring,
by silent moth and owl on wing, by moonlight caught in silver thread, by whispered paths the lost have tread. Come dancing light, come laughing shade, by ancient pact and promise made, I call you.
From that small, precise gesture, something luminous unfolded, a fragile winged creature no larger than a sparrow, with translucent limbs and a soft trembling glow.
Go,
she whispered. The fairy rose without a sound, drifting upward past the broken railing into the second-floor corridor where the darkness pooled thickest. The party waited below, every breath too loud in the stillness, every movement intrusive in the dead air. Moments passed. Then the voice came into Arabella's mind, thin and quivering.
There is crying. Above. A room at the end. It is wrong. I do not like it.
A faint sound followed, carried down from the upper floor. Crying, Drock shifted his grip on his weapon.
That is never good,
he muttered. Malika nodded once, grim and silent. Percival stretched and scratched his flank with an enormous paw. The big cat looked at Zenobia.
The caravanserai is a crossroads, not of roads of dreams. Some dreams pass through, some dreams get lost, and some dreams should never be followed, no matter who is calling your name.
They had just begun to move toward the stairs when the fog rolled in. It did not drift naturally. It spilled, thick green vapor, pouring down the stairwell and seeping through the archways. It moved with intention, with hunger.
Get back!
Zenobia shouted, but it was already too late. Malachi coughed violently, dropping to one knee as the fog swallowed him to the waist. Even the stone beneath their feet seemed to pulse faintly, as though the caravanserai itself exhaled the poison. A figure stepped into view above. At the top of the stairway, framed by the broken arches of the second-floor balcony, she appeared, tall, crooked, draped in tattered shadows that clung to her like wet cloth. Her skin was the color of old bone, stretched thin across a face that seemed both ancient and unfinished. Her eyes gleamed, not with light, but with depth, as though they opened into some deeper dark. The night hag leaned forward on the cracked railing, her long fingers curling over the stone.
You should not have come here.
Her voice echoed strangely, as though spoken from multiple directions, from above, from behind, from somewhere inside a listener's own skull. Her lips twisted into something like a smile.
This place belongs to the forgotten.
And then, movement. From the shadows behind the party, from the walls, from places that should have been empty. They came crawling, long-limbed, emaciated things, their skin stretched tight over jutting bones, their joints bending at angles that defied nature. Their eyes were black voids, reflecting not the courtyard, but something else entirely. Something vast, Lenghouls. Jock barely turned in time to catch the first one's lunge, steel ringing against claw as the creature's weight drove him backward. Malachi cried out as another seized his arm, its touch cold and impossibly strong. Zenobia tried to form a spell, but the fog choked the words from her throat and twisted her vision into swimming shadows. Jock drove his shoulder into the ghoul in front of him, forcing it back a step. Its limbs bent and recoiled with a sickening elasticity, joints popping softly as though amused by the violence. It did not fall. It did not even seem inconvenienced. Instead, Jock's own body convulsed at the creature's touch, and terror gripped him as the cold paralysis crept into his limbs. The creature smiled, not with lips, but with the slow widening of that needle-filled maw. It cocked its head, studying him, its black eyes reflecting not Jock, but something taller, grander, distorted, a version of him stretched thin across some alien horizon. Then it spoke. Its voice was wet and layered, like several mouths trying to use the same throat. Ah, the strong one. We have eaten strong ones before. It leaned closer, far too close, its breath cold and smelling faintly of dust and old graves. Tell me, when you break, will you still pretend you are a hero? Behind him, another voice rose, sharper, more animated, almost gleeful. A second Lenghul crouched atop a fallen pillar, its spine arched like a grotesque parody of a cat. Its claws flexed eagerly, clicking against one another as it surveyed the party. No need for all this mess, it crooned, tilting its head. We are reasonable things, aren't we? Its grin widened impossibly, splitting further than anatomy should allow. Give us your trinkets, your glittering little dreams. It sniffed the air, shuddering with pleasure. Magic. Oh yes, we taste it on you. The preacher leapt lightly down, landing with a soft, boneless grace. It began to pace, dragging one claw lazily along the edge of a stone bench, leaving deep grooves in its wake. Weapons, rings, wands, all of it. Lay them down. Its voice dropped suddenly cold, suddenly sharp. Or we will take them from your skins. Zenobia choked on the bitter fog as she rolled out of the expanding cloud. She could see Malika and Jock lying motionless on the ground. Angelica was gasping for breath, searching desperately for a way out of the Had's toxic spell. Zenobia made an arcane gesture, and a small tempest of wind formed between her palms. As she concentrated, the winds began to roar around her, growing into a swirling vortex that tore through the courtyard and swept the toxic fumes away. The hag cursed and swore, then turned and vanished into the darkness. Percival leapt into the air and landed beside Jock's motionless body. The giant, cat-like creature snarled menacingly at the nearest ghoul. Frightened, the creature snatched Jock's amulet from around his neck and bounded across the courtyard. The other two followed. Percival lowered his great head and licked the fighter's face with his massive tongue. Jock grimaced.
Does this mean we are friends again?
The Yellow King. The party climbed the stairway and came to the room where the crying had come from. The door creaked inward, revealing a dim, sourceless yellow light that clung to the walls like old smoke. The air smelled of dust and mildew, and beneath it, something else lingered, something sweet and rotten. They heard it immediately, laughing, then crying, then laughing again. A tall man stood in the center of the room, dark-bearded and draped in tattered yellow robes that hung from his body like torn banners. His hair was long and unkempt, and his eyes glittered with a strange, wet brightness. He swayed as he laughed, then suddenly clutched his head and began to sob as if his skull was splitting open. Zenobia froze for only a fraction of a second before she recognized him.
Lols.
She whispered. Then she was moving. Her dagger flashed into her hand as she rushed forward, fury and grief colliding in a single motion. But before she reached him, the man collapsed to his knees and threw up his hands in terror.
Wait! Wait! Do not kill me! Do not kill the Yellow King!
Zenobia stopped, her blade hovering inches from his throat.
You are Count Hazerton Lols, and I have crossed 2 worlds to find you.
The man shook his head frantically, his expression a grotesque mixture of fear and delight.
No, no, no! Laos is elsewhere. Laos is broken. Laos is scattered like pages in the wind.
Tapped his temple with a dirty fingernail.
I am only a piece, a little piece, a fragment that remembers.
Jock stepped forward, one hand resting on the hilt of his weapon.
If you are a fragment, then tell us where the rest of him is.
The man in yellow began to rock back and forth.
When the Count found the mad poet, he was shown a book.
He whispered reverently. What?
Not the book. No, no, not the true one, but a copy. A Dreamlands copy of the Necronomicon.
He began to laugh again, high and thin.
It opened his mind like an egg. Everything spilled out. Dreams, memories, fears, desires cracked and scattered across the Dreamlands. I am one of those pieces.
Zenobia pressed the dagger closer.
Where is Lols?
I don't know.
The man shrieked, recoiling from the blade.
I swear it. The pieces do not know where the others fall. But I know something better. I know where to find the master. I can take you to him.
The mad poet,
Rekis said quietly. At this, the man in yellow smiled, a wide, trembling smile.
Yes, the mad poet. He walks the Dreamlands and writes in the margins of reality. He showed Loz the book. He shattered him.
The man leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially.
I can take you to him, and I know that he has something that was taken from you.
Jock narrowed his eyes.
And why would you help us?
The man's smile widened further, almost painfully so.
Because I want to be whole again, and the mad poet knows where all the pages are hidden.
He pointed a shaking finger toward the hallway beyond the room.
But first, you need to find the gifts. The poet respects hospitality. He is a civilized man. There are 3 gifts. But I need the book of abstruse geometries. Loz made notes in that book and hid it in the map room. Bring it to me, and I will lead you to the mad poet. Bring me the book.
The Yellow King whispered, rocking back and forth in his tattered robes.
Bring me the book, and I will show you where the story goes next. I will show you where your memories are buried.
The Book of Abstruse Geometries. They left the Yellow King rocking and muttering in his chamber and made their way back toward the courtyard, their footsteps echoing through the cracked stone corridors of the caravanserai. Arabella's fairy light drifted ahead of them, a small and fragile star guiding them back beneath the open sky. The courtyard had changed. The fountain at its center was no longer dry and crumbling. Now it was full brimming with thick, shining black fluid that reflected the pale Dreamland's moon like a sheet of polished obsidian. The surface did not ripple like water. It moved slowly, heavily, like oil, or something thicker. Maliki frowned.
That wasn't there before.
The Seville paced back and forth, nervously.
When the black flower blooms, the debt of bones will be paid.
Jock stepped ahead of the group and approached the fountain, peering into the black mirror surface.
Looks like tar.
The surface bulged. It swelled upward as if something enormous were pressing against it from below. The black fluid stretched into a long, glistening column that twisted and unfolded like a nightmare flower blooming in reverse. Then, it fell on him. The thing rose out of the fountain in a single, silent surge. A towering mass of black, shapeless slime shot through with pale, half-formed faces that appeared and dissolved in seconds. Long tendrils lashed outward, wrapping around Jock before he could even raise his weapon. Rickus shouted. The Skald cast a blessing on the fighter, but it was too late. The creature opened a widening split in its body and pulled him inside. The black surface swallowed him whole, and for a moment his silhouette could be seen inside the creature, struggling, striking, fading, as the ooze closed around him. The courtyard exploded into chaos. Spells lit the night in violent flashes of blue and white. Steel hacked into black flesh that flowed back together like liquid. The thing struck like a tidal wave, slamming into the walls, lashing out with heavy tendrils that cracked stone and sent the party sprawling. Arabella tried to summon her fairy creatures, but a writhing black tentacle knocked her to the ground. Inside the creature, Jock was still moving. They could see him, a faint shape, a silhouette, swinging, fighting, slowing. Malachi shouted words of power that made the air vibrate.
Lady of Graves, hear my prayer. Banish this abomination with the power of your holy light.
Zenobia's magic burned great holes through the creature's body, making it shudder and split apart. Angelica climbed onto the fountain and drove her blade again and again into the creature's heaving mass, screaming in fury. Percival tore into the creature with his razor claws, ripping away chunks of the black flesh. The ooze reared up, towering over them, its surface forming dozens of faces, all screaming silently. Percival lunged and raked the gigantic creature, trying to free Jock. Then, with a final blast of magic and steel, the creature collapsed. The black mass lost its shape and slumped across the courtyard stones like spilled ink. It twitched, quivered, and then lay still. They rushed forward immediately, cutting into the dead ooze, pulling the thick black slime apart, searching. Jock lay on the stones, covered in black fluid, his armor pitted and smoking, his skin pale and unmoving. Malachi dropped to his knees, searching for breath, for a pulse, for anything. There was nothing. Rickus reached out, but the big man's body disintegrated, as if he were made of smoke and sand. The Dreamland's wind moved softly through the broken courtyard. No one spoke. Back to the Heriday Theatre. They did not remember how they got there. Sleep came like a curtain falling, sudden, heavy, absolute. Then, one by one, they awoke. The air was cold and dry, and the smell of old stone and older dust filled their lungs. Somewhere, water dripped slowly, each drop echoing through unseen pipes in hollow spaces, like the ticking of a patient clock. They were lying on the floor of a long, low basement room beneath the Heriday Theatre. Old stage props lay scattered everywhere. Broken chairs, cracked masks, painted backdrops showing faded scenes of faraway cities, all yellowed with age. Wooden crates sat half open, filled with costumes from 100 forgotten performances. Kings, fools, devils, and beggars tangled together in silent heaps. Arabella woke first, then Rickus, then Malachi. Finally, Zenobia stirred and saw Jock sitting upright against a crate, looking like a man who had walked 1,000 miles through a nightmare and only just stopped running. He was pale, not just pale, drained. His skin had a grayish cast, and dark circles hung beneath his eyes. But he was smiling.
Well, dying isn't as bad as I thought it would be.
A long silence followed. The fighter lowered his head.
Yeah, that sounded better in my head.
Zenobia crossed the room in 2 quick steps and punched him in the shoulder.
Never do that again.
Jock winced.
Well, I wasn't planning on it.
From the far end of the basement came the sound of slow footsteps. Talia emerged from between 2 hanging backdrops, her expression distant, as though she had been listening to something no one else could hear. Zenobia reached into her satchel and pulled out the strange, angular tome they had taken from the Dreamlands.
The Book of Abstruse Geometries.
She said, handing it to her. Talia took the book and frowned, turning it over in her hands as if she did not recognize it. Malachi stepped closer.
Open it. Look at the margins.
Thalia opened the book slowly. At first, her brow furrowed in confusion as she flipped through pages of impossible diagrams, staircases that turned into spirals, that turned into doors that opened into themselves. But then she noticed the writing in the margins, cramped notes, strange diagrams, and runic inscriptions. Someone had studied this book very carefully. Her eyes began to move faster as she turned page after page. Confusion slowly became recognition, and then understanding.
I see. Yes, I see.
She turned to the group, her face pale.
The mad poet can be found, but not by roads, not by gates. He must be approached symbolically, with gifts, keys, really. Each one opens part of the way.
What kind of gifts?
Jock asked. Thalia closed the book.
A signet ring, she said, a pard's tail, and a night hag's heartstone.
At the last item, everyone slowly turned to look at one another. They had just fought a night hag.
These are not random objects. They are tokens of authority, transformation, and dreams. The mad poet is bound by story and symbol. If you bring these to him, he will receive you. If you do not, you may never find him at all.
She stepped closer, lowering her voice.
I can help you find these things, but you must understand, everything in the Dreamlands works like a story. You are not just traveling, you are becoming characters in something older than you are.
From somewhere far above them, on the theater stage overhead, came the faint sound of footsteps and distant applause. Thalia looked up toward the ceiling.
The second act has begun.
Count Pietro's Ball. The ritual circle dissolved into pale smoke, and the party felt the familiar sensation of falling without moving. For a moment, there was only the sound of distant surf and the feeling of cool night air. And then, the world settled into place beneath their feet. They stood upon a long white bridge of polished marble that stretched across a dark, silent gulf. The city rose in terraces of pale stone and slender towers, its domes and colonnades glowing softly under a vast, unfamiliar sun that seemed always on the verge of setting. Carriages rolled silently past them toward the estate gates, drawn by tall, pale horses whose hooves made no sound on the stone. Figures in elaborate dress and delicate masks stepped out beneath lantern light and made their way up a grand staircase toward the open doors. Angelica adjusted her gloves and mask, watching everything. Jock rolled his shoulders and muttered that he preferred enemies who announced themselves with axes. Zenobia stared up at the architecture with fascination, already trying to determine whether the geometry of the place made sense. Arabella seemed giddy, with a child's curiosity. Malachi alone looked uneasy, his holy symbol cold in his hand. They ascended the stairs with the other guests and entered the Brellan estate. Inside, the foyer was vast and brilliant, marble floors polished to mirror brightness, Tall walls hung with silver-framed mirrors, and a sweeping double staircase that curved upward to a balcony where more guests gathered beneath chiming crystal chandeliers. Servants in silver masks moved through the crowd with trays of wine and delicate glass flutes. Beyond a set of tall doors, music poured from the ballroom, violins, harps, and laughter. But the mood in the room was wrong. People spoke too quietly. They smiled too quickly. Conversations ended when others approached. Fans fluttered not from heat, but from nerves. Angelica drifted away from the group, moving along the edges of conversations, her posture relaxed, her ears open. Near a column, two women spoke behind feathered masks.
Claudette vanished this afternoon. Gone? Completely? They say she was last seen in the West Wing, but that wing is sealed.
Across the room, Arabella pretended to study a painting while listening to two older men speaking near a mirrored wall. Jock, already bored with noble manners, took a glass from a passing tray and stood near the base of the staircase, scanning the room like a soldier on watch. Zenobia joined him, her eyes moving constantly, exits, guards, balconies, doors. Malachi lingered near the center of the room, quietly observing faces, looking for fear, guilt, or something worse. A masked servant approached them quietly, bowed, and informed them that Count Pietro Brellan would grant them a private audience. They were led to a raised gallery overlooking one of the inner ballrooms, a place clearly designed for the Count to be seen. At the far end of the gallery, upon a low platform, stood an elaborate chair that was not quite a throne, but clearly meant to resemble one. Gold leaf curled along its arms like frozen flames, and velvet cushions of deep violet were piled high upon it. Seated there, surrounded by attendants, was Count Pietro Brellan. The Count was a slight man, almost delicate, dressed in layers of elaborate silk and brocade in white, silver, and pale blue. Around his neck was a massive white ruffled collar, so large it framed his head like a porcelain plate. Rings glittered on his fingers, but only one mattered, the large silver signet ring engraved with the strange curling symbol. As they approached, the Count dabbed at his lips with a lace handkerchief and coughed a thin, wet, unpleasant sound. One of the attendants leaned in immediately.
Your Excellency speaks with such wisdom.
Another laughed loudly at nothing in particular.
Yes, yes, such strength, such grace.
A third nodded vigorously. The city itself prospers because of your magnificent guidance. The Count waved a hand weakly, smiling as if this were all perfectly normal. As he lowered his hand, the party could see it clearly. The enormous white collar was stained along one edge with a dark black substance, like ink or oil, or something thicker. The Count coughed again.
Ah, you are the travelers I was told about. Yes, interesting people, capable people, I am told.
His voice was thin and reedy, but carried well enough.
You have been looking at my ring.
The attendants all leaned in slightly, suddenly very interested in the conversation. Pietro smiled and lifted his hand, admiring the signet ring as though he had forgotten he was wearing it.
Yes, a symbol of office, you understand.
He chuckled weakly and then coughed again into his handkerchief.
I would give it to you.
He said suddenly, very plainly.
Gladly, in fact, if you would help me solve a small social difficulty.
Behind him, the attendants nodded vigorously.
Yes, yes, a small matter.
Nothing at all for such capable guests.
His Excellency is too kind, too generous.
The Count sighed and leaned back into his cushions.
You see, tonight is the sunset dance. A very important tradition in our city. One does not refuse the sunset dance when it is offered. It is politically delicate. The problem is that I have promised the sunset dance to 3 different people.
The attendants all laughed as though this were charming rather than alarming.
Oh, His Excellency is too beloved.
Everyone adores the Count.
Such a romantic soul.
The Count opened his eyes again and looked directly at the party.
But now, my beloved is returning tonight, unexpectedly, and I must correct these prior commitments before the dance begins. I cannot do it myself. It would be unpleasant, and I am not feeling well.
He gestured weakly with one hand.
You will go to these 3 and inform them that I cannot dance with them tonight.
He raised a finger.
You must be polite, diplomatic, gentle. I do not want a scene. This is a refined gathering. The first is Lady Splinterbone,
he said, with a faint smile.
She is very old, very proud. She will be in the Moon Garden, or somewhere dark and dramatic. She enjoys the dark and dramatic.
A third attendant added helpfully.
She prefers not to be approached too quickly, or from behind, or with a mirror.
The Count continued, as if this were perfectly normal.
The second is Prince Arvin Telgret, a merchant prince. Very rich, very sensitive. He will be in the gallery or near the wine. Tell him I am devastated.
He raised a third finger.
The last is, yes, Claudette.
At that name, the attendants went very still. The Count did not seem to notice.
A common girl, but charming. Very charming. I promised her the sunset dance yesterday.
Angelica and the others exchanged glances.
You will find her somewhere in the house, I am sure. She wanders. Curious girl.
He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping just a little.
Tell all 3 the same thing, that the Count begs their forgiveness, but circumstances have changed and he cannot honor the dance.
He leaned back again and smiled.
Do this for me, and the ring is yours.
He paused, then added quietly.
And if you happen to find Claudette, do send her to me.
Lady Splinterbone. The music did not stop at first. It continued for several seconds after the glass shattered, a delicate crystalline sound that seemed far too loud in the perfumed air of Count Pietro Brelan's ballroom. The musicians faltered one by one as the sound echoed across the marble floor, the final notes of the harpsichord dying in uncertain, stuttering tones. Then the room went completely silent. Not the silence of polite attention or social embarrassment, but a heavy, suffocating silence, as if the air itself were holding its breath. The man who had dropped the glass, a thin nobleman in a pale green coat, stared down at the shards near his feet. His face had gone white, his lips trembled. Slowly, as if compelled by some terrible understanding, he began to look upward. No one else moved. No one else looked. Angelica noticed first that the chandeliers above did not illuminate the ceiling properly. The light seemed to fade into a darkness too thick and too deep for the height of the room. The ceiling should have been painted plaster, cherubs, clouds, pastoral scenes, but instead there was only shadow. Something moved in that shadow. A long, glistening appendage, like a tentacle, but jointed in the wrong places, uncoiled from the darkness above. It descended slowly, almost delicately, like a fisherman lowering a line into still water. The appendage snapped downward with horrifying speed. It wrapped around the man's torso and lifted him into the air before he could even scream. His shoe struck the marble floor once, a sharp, lonely sound, and then he was pulled upward into the darkness beyond the chandelier light. There was a wet, tearing noise. then a heavy splash. Black liquid rained down onto the marble floor in thick, glistening drops. It smelled faintly of brine and rot, and something chemical and ancient. A lump of something pale fell among the droplets, then dissolved into the black slurry, as if it had never been solid at all. The silence lasted only a moment longer. Then the musicians resumed playing. Conversation and laughter resumed. A servant appeared at Arabella's elbow, as if from nowhere, carrying a silver bucket and a cloth already stained black. 2 more servants followed with sand and sawdust, spreading it quickly and efficiently over the slick marble. Jock stared upward, his hand slowly tightening around the grip of his weapon.
Seriously, can't we just fight the Lenguls again? I mean, this place is really creeping me out.
Zenobia's eyes narrowed as she studied the darkness above the chandeliers, her mind already turning through forbidden geometries and older possibilities. Malachi quietly began whispering a prayer under his breath. Arabella watched the guests instead of the ceiling, watched how none of them looked surprised. None of them looked afraid. They looked almost accustomed. Lady Splinterbone stood near the edge of the ballroom, where the candlelight seemed dimmer, as if the flames themselves were reluctant to come too close to her. She was tall and impossibly elegant, her skin pale like porcelain, her black hair falling in perfect waves over a gown of deep crimson velvet. Jewels glittered at her throat, rubies of course, and when she smiled, it was with the calm confidence of a predator that had never once been denied a meal. She saw Rikus immediately, for eyes fixed on him from across the room, and she lifted one pale finger and crooked it slightly, beckoning him as though the matter had already been decided. Rikus sighed.
Well,
he muttered, adjusting his collar.
If I do not return, please make sure there are songs composed about my heroic last stand.
Try not to die,
Malachi said flatly.
I make no promises.
Rikus crossed the ballroom floor, weaving between dancers, and approached Lady Splinterbone with a deep, theatrical bow.
My lady,
he said, taking her hand lightly.
You summoned me.
The hand was cold, truly cold, like marble in winter.
I did not summon you. I invited you. There is a difference, I assure you.
I am honored by the distinction.
Her eyes studied him for a long moment, not looking at his face, but at his throat, the movement of blood beneath the skin, the steady pulse of life.
Tu horas cold,
she said.
I can smell it. Strong blood, loud blood, heroic blood.
She leaned slightly closer.
Delicious blood.
Rikus laughed nervously.
I have been described many ways, my lady, but never as a beverage.
Malachi approached then, giving a polite bow.
By Lady Splinterbone,
the cleric said carefully.
I bring a message from Count Brelin. He regrets that he will not be able to attend the sunset dance with you this evening.
The temperature around them seemed to drop another few degrees. Her eyes moved slowly from Rikus to Malika.
I take your pardon?
She said quietly.
The Count has had pressing matters arise. He fears he would not be the charming company you deserve this evening.
Her expression hardened, not into rage, but into something far more dangerous. Wounded pride.
Do you have any idea what it would mean for me to be refused? In public? At this gathering?
Her gaze drifted across the ballroom, where nobles laughed and danced beneath the chandeliers and the unseen horror above them.
It would be humiliating, and I do not endure humiliation.
There was a long, tense silence. Then Rikus spoke gently.
My lady, if I may be so bold, the Count is a fool.
A fool?
She repeated.
A small man in a large chair.
Rikus said.
Coughing, trembling, hiding behind servants and titles. But you,
he gestured gracefully toward her, you
are the most magnificent creature in this entire room. If the Count does not dance with you, then it is not you who is diminished. It is he who reveals his own poor taste.
She studied him carefully, searching for mockery. She found none, only a bard's dangerous sincerity.
And what would you propose as a remedy for this insult?
Brickus swallowed.
Well,
he said, forcing a charming smile.
Perhaps you might grant the Count forgiveness in exchange for a small consolation.
Her eyes gleamed slightly.
What sort of consolation?
Brickus hesitated, then sighed and lowered his collar, exposing the flesh of his neck. Malachi closed his eyes briefly. Lady Splinterbone smiled, and this time the fangs were very visible.
Very well, Skald. You have courage and manners. I value both.
She took his arm and guided him toward a shadowed balcony alcove away from the dancers. The curtains were drawn, the music muffled, the air cool and still.
Do not struggle. It ruins the flavor.
She leaned in, her hand gently tilting his head to the side, exposing his neck. For a brief moment, her expression softened, almost tenderly, and then she bit down. Riker stiffened, his hands gripping the balcony railing as his breath caught. His eyes went wide, then slowly unfocused. The color drained from his face as she drank, slow and deliberate, like a noblewoman enjoying a fine wine. After what felt like an eternity, but was likely less than a minute, she pulled away. A thin line of red ran down his neck, already beginning to clot. She looked noticeably better color in her cheeks, eyes brighter.
Exquisite,
she said. Riker swayed slightly.
You are welcome,
he mumbled. She caught him before he collapsed and gently sat him on a bench.
I am a lady, not a monster.
From the ballroom, the music swelled as the dance continued. When Malachi and the others found him a few minutes later, Rikis was pale, sweating, and holding a handkerchief to his neck.
Well?
Jock asked. Rikis gave a weak thumbs up.
She will not be dancing with the Count.
He paused, then added faintly.
But I believe she may have stolen several of my favorite memories.
The merchant prince, Prince Ardvin Telignet, stood in a bright cluster of merchants and minor nobles, holding court in the way that only a very rich man and a very insecure man can manage at the same time. He wore rings on nearly every finger, a waistcoat embroidered with gold thread, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He spoke loudly, laughed loudly, and made sure everyone nearby heard the totals of his latest ventures.
Triple the investment in only 4 months,
Ardvin was saying, tapping the side of his nose.
Shipping, my friends. It is all about shipping routes. Control the route, control the price, control the market.
The other merchants nodded, some impressed, some irritated, all pretending to be more impressed than they were. Zenobia and Angelica approached just as he was describing, in great detail, how he had once cornered the saffron market in 3 coastal cities. Angelica waited for a pause, then spoke in a slightly conspiratorial tone.
Prince Telignet, we were told you are a man who recognizes opportunity before anyone else.
Ardvin turned immediately, already smiling.
My dear, the people who told you that are very perceptive. And you are?
Investors,
Zenobia said smoothly.
with a new venture, one that is about to become extremely fashionable.
Ardvin raised an eyebrow.
Fashion is a volatile market.
Not this.
Angelica said.
This is not fashion. This is status.
That word caught him.
Go on.
Zenobia leaned in slightly, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret meant only for the wealthy.
The noble ladies, she said, are all rushing to have plaster casts made.
Advin blinked.
Plaster casts. Of their feet.
Angelica added. There was a long pause.
I'm sorry. Of their feet.
Yes. It began in the southern courts. A sculptor made a cast of a duchess's foot so that her shoemaker could produce perfectly fitted slippers without her needing to attend repeated fittings. But now the casts themselves have become fashionable objects, painted, gilded, displayed in glass cases, a symbol of refinement.
Angelica nodded.
The smaller and more delicate the foot, the more impressive the display. It has become a competition.
Ardvin looked skeptical, but not dismissive. He was doing calculations in his head.
Plaster is cheap,
he said, slowly.
Exactly.
Zenobia said.
Cheap to make, expensive to sell.
We are looking for a business partner who understands scale, production, and distribution. Someone who could dominate the market before anyone else realizes what is happening.
Ardvin looked back at his merchant companions, who were now listening very carefully.
And you can demonstrate this process?
He asked.
Of course.
Zenobia said.
We have the materials on the balcony. We were preparing a demonstration for some of the ladies.
Ardvin smiled broadly.
Well then, I am a man who believes in seeing an investment with his own eyes.
They led him out onto one of the moonlit balconies overlooking the gardens. The music from inside was softer here, replaced by the sound of distant night insects and the faint rustle of black leaves in the dreamland's breeze. Zenobia produced a small bucket of plaster mixture from a satchel. Angelica produced a wooden frame.
Simply place your foot here.
Angelica said pleasantly. Ardvin removed one shoe, then the other, handing them to Zenobia without thinking. He rolled up his trouser leg slightly and placed his foot into the frame. Angelica and Zenobia carefully poured the plaster around his foot. It hardened quickly, too quickly, but Ardvin did not seem to notice at first.
Remarkable. And the ladies are paying for this?
Oh yes, quite a lot.
Ardvin tried to lift his foot slightly. It did not move. He frowned and tried again, harder this time. The plaster did not crack. It did not shift. Zenobia quietly spoke a single arcane word under her breath, and faint runes glowed for just a moment in the plaster before fading. Ardvin pulled harder. Nothing.
What is this?
A note of irritation creeping into his voice. Angelica stepped back, brushing plaster dust from her hands.
There will be no dancing for you tonight, Prince Teleget,
she said calmly. He looked from her to Zenobia, then down at his trapped foot.
You can't be serious, he said. Do you have any idea who I am?
Yes, you are a very busy man. Too busy to attend the sunset dance with Count Brelin?
Understanding slowly dawned on his face, then anger.
This is outrageous. I will have you both.
Prince Teleginet.
Angelica interrupted softly.
If you begin shouting, people will come out here. They will see you standing barefoot on a balcony with your foot stuck in a bucket of plaster.
There was a long pause. Inside, the orchestra began a new waltz. Ardvin looked toward the ballroom doors, then back at them.
How long?
He asked through clenched teeth.
Until well after the sunset dance,
Zenobia said pleasantly. Angelica handed him a glass of wine.
For the inconvenience,
she said. He took it slowly, glaring at both of them.
You are very lucky that I admire ruthless business tactics.
Zenobia smiled slightly.
We were hoping you would understand.
Claudette Bella returned from the servant corridors with a strange look on her face. The look she had when she had learned something she wished she had not learned.
The waitstaff are talking. They said that Claudette has been taken by the thing up in the ceiling. They say she still might be alive. They say sometimes the guests are kept. I tried to send one of my companions up there, but it's pretty dark. Still, something is going on up there for sure.
Sometimes guests are kept. Kept by what?
Jock said. Arabella nodded toward a narrow service hallway.
Don't know. But there's an access ladder. The servants use it. It goes up into the dark above the ballroom.
They found the ladder behind a velvet curtain, half hidden, as if the house itself did not care whether it was discovered. The wood was old and slightly sticky to the touch. The higher they climbed, the more the music from below became muffled and distorted, like a song heard underwater. Halfway up, they heard it, muffled screaming. Angelica climbed the last few rungs and slowly lifted her head above the level of the rafters. The space above the ballroom was enormous, far larger than the building should have allowed. Wooden beams crossed through darkness that seemed too deep, too thick. Platforms and walkways had been built up here, hidden in the shadows above the chandeliers. And there were webs. Great sheets of webbing stretched between the beams, thick as rope in places, trembling slightly as something moved in the darkness. Angelica vanished from sight. Invisible, she crept forward along one of the narrow wooden walkways, silent as a shadow. She saw the platform. High above the ballroom floor, a wooden platform had been constructed between the beams. Wrapped in thick webbing and struggling weakly was a young woman in a simple but pretty dress, Claudette. Her mouth was partially covered in silk, and her eyes were wide with terror. And beside her was a spider the size of a horse. Its body was glossy black, its legs long and jointed like spears, its eyes reflecting faint chandelier light from far below. It moved slowly, carefully, as if savoring the moment. Angelica returned to the group and whispered,
She's alive, but not for long.
They began making their way across the narrow walkway, a precarious path of old boards suspended over the vast ballroom below. Through gaps in the planks, they could see the dancers, tiny and elegant, spinning in circles, completely unaware of the nightmare directly above their heads. They were halfway across when the webbing ahead of them shook violently. Two shapes dropped down from the rafters onto the walkway in front of them. Etacaps. Tall, hunched, man-shaped horrors with long clawed hands and glistening mandibles. Their eyes gleamed with cruel intelligence as they blocked the path, chittering and hissing. One of them spoke in a wet, clicking voice. Food should not walk. The fight on the narrow walkway was brutal and dangerous. Jock nearly went over the side when one of the Etacaps slammed into him, splintering part of the railing. Malachi's holy symbol burned with pale light as he drove one creature back. Zenobia's magic lit the darkness in blinding flashes that made the spider above recoil. Angelica appeared and disappeared like a ghost striking from invisibility. Rickus, pale but stubbornly conscious, sang through clenched teeth, his voice echoing strangely in the rafters as he bolstered the others.
O fathers, hear my song. Mothers, look upon your sons with pride. Blood and fire, iron and bone. Here we stand and fight together as one.
One Etacap fell first, tumbling off the walkway into the darkness below, its body vanishing before it ever hit the ballroom floor. Later, the second died hard. Then, the spider came. It moved with terrifying speed, dropping from the platform onto the walkway, its legs slamming into the wood with enough force to crack the planks. Its mandibles snapped inches from Angelica as she rolled beneath it. The fight was short and vicious. Zenobia burned it. Jock hacked at its legs. Malaki called down divine fire. Finally, with a horrible shriek, the creature collapsed, its legs curling inward as it died, its body wedged across the walkway like a fallen gate. They climbed over it and reached the platform. Claudette was crying behind the webbing.
We're here to get you down,
Angelica said, cutting through the webbing. As the silk fell away, Claudette stumbled forward and grabbed Angelica in a desperate hug.
I thought I was going to be eaten.
She said, shaking.
I just wanted to go to the dance.
Rickus, still pale and holding his neck, managed a weak smile.
Good news. You are not going to be eaten.
She looked at her torn dress, the webbing still stuck in her hair, and her expression suddenly shifted from terror to disappointment.
But I'll miss the sunset dance,
she said sadly. It was a long pause. Angelica raised an eyebrow.
Yes, you will. But then, life is filled with disappointments, isn't it?
His beloved returned. Far below, the music for the sunset dance began to play. They found Count Pietro Brellin where they had left him, reclining in his ornate chair atop the low platform, wrapped in silks and lace, a handkerchief stained black, clutched in one trembling hand. His attendants still hovered around him like brightly dressed birds, laughing too loudly at things that were not funny. When the party approached, the Count looked up anxiously.
Well?
He asked, his voice thin and wet, with that terrible cough.
Is it done? Have my difficult admirers been attended to?
Malachi inclined his head.
Lady Splinterbone has agreed to forgo the sunset dance.
The Count visibly relaxed, sinking back into his cushions.
And Prince Stelagnet?
He asked.
Detained,
Zenobia said calmly. The Count gave a weak, delighted laugh that turned into a rattling cough.
And the common girl, Claudette?
He asked.
Rescued.
Angelica said.
But she will not be attending the dance either.
The Count stared at them for a moment. Then his face broke into a look of pure relief.
Oh, you miraculous people,
he said, clutching his chest dramatically.
You have saved me from the most dreadful social catastrophe. Do you have any idea what it is like to promise the same dance to 3 different people? The scheduling alone is a nightmare.
He waved a weak hand at one of his servants.
The box?
He said. A servant in a black mask and gloves approached carrying a small lacquered box and presented it with a bow. The Count opened it with a flourish and turned it toward the party. Inside were signet rings, dozens of them. Gold, silver, iron, bronze, each set with a different crest, a different symbol, a different tiny carved face or room. Some were beautiful, some were ugly, some looked ancient, some looked disturbingly organic, as if they had not been made, but grown.
These,
the Count said generously.
Take one, take several, take a handful. I have so many I can't keep track of them all.
Jock looked into the box and muttered.
That seems concerning.
The Count suddenly sat upright, eyes wide, staring past them toward the far end of the ballroom.
Oh, my beloved is here.
He began to tremble, not with fear, but with excitement.
My beloved is finally here.
The party turned. At first, the crowd simply parted, nobles and merchants stepping aside politely, as if making room for a late arriving guest of great importance. Then they saw what was walking through the ballroom. It was enormous. A spider, but not like the one in the rafters. This creature was tall enough that its back nearly brushed the chandeliers. Its long legs moved with eerie grace across the marble floor. Its body was a deep, royal purple, glossy like polished velvet. Strange patterns shimmered across its abdomen, like moving constellations. Its face, if it could be called a face, had too many eyes, and they glittered with unmistakable intelligence. No one screamed, no one ran. The guests simply stepped aside, smiling politely, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. The Leng spider approached the Count's platform and lowered its massive body gracefully. One long leg reached out, almost delicately, and the Count took it in both of his hands.
My love,
he said, his voice filled with genuine adoration. The spider made a low, humming sound that might have been speech, or might have been affection. The orchestra, without being told, began to play the Sunset Waltz. The Count stepped down from his platform, still coughing, still smiling, and the enormous purple spider gently wrapped two of its front legs around him as they began to dance across the ballroom floor. They moved beautifully together, turning slowly in time with the music, silk and lace and chitin and purple shadow spinning beneath the golden chandeliers. Around them, the guests applauded politely. Above them, in the darkness, something vast shifted and watched. And as the sun set beyond the tall windows of the Dreamlands, Count Pietro Brelin and his beloved danced the sunset dance together, while black stains slowly spread across the front of the Count's white ruffled collar. Later that night at the Harrowday Theatre, after everyone had awoken from the Dreamlands, Percival paced on the edge of the long oak table, his tail held high like a banner of quiet authority. The theatre was mostly dark now, lit only by the low amber glow of a few lamps and the cold, bluish shimmer that leaked from the open book of abstruse geometries. To any ordinary observer, Percival was merely a house cat, a soft teal creature with clever eyes and an occasional air of smugness. He paused, placed one delicate paw on the open page, and stared at the spiraling diagram that hurt the human mind to look at for too long. He muttered to himself, his voice a soft, cultured purr that no human in the room could hear.
Companions, that we magnificent beings who ruled the first empires of the world could ever be a companions to such wretched creatures.
He began pacing again.
They have never understood the arrangement, not since the first cities, not since the Dream Kings, not since the cats of Ulfar were given dominion over the secret paths.
His yellow eyes drifted toward the sleeping forms of the party. Malachi slumped in a chair with a book on his chest. Zenobia asleep at the table with ink on her fingers. Jock snoring like a dying war drum. Arabella staring into nothing, as she often did when she remembered too much.
My humans,
Percival said softly, almost fondly.
So brave, so violent, so tragically easy to manipulate.
He leapt silently onto the table and began walking across the pages of the book, stepping precisely between the lines and symbols as if he understood every mark, which, in fact, he did.
The pod's tail,
he said, and his ears twitched with irritation.
The time to reclaim what was taken from me is at last at hand. Fate is not a chain, as humans believe. It is a tapestry. We are not bound by it, but are woven into it, and you cannot leave without tearing something.
His fur bristled slightly.
It thought I would forget. It thought that because I chose for a time to live as a small, soft thing, that I had become a small, soft thing.
He stopped at the center of the book, where a diagram showed a series of impossible angles forming a staircase that folded into itself. Percival placed his paw on the page, and the diagram slowly rotated, the lines shifting like living things. He sat down and wrapped his tail neatly around his feet.
My humans will go there. They will bleed there. They will fight things they cannot understand there. And they will bring me what was stolen.
He began to purr, a low, ancient sound that did not belong to any normal cat.
And then,
Percival said, his eyes reflecting strange, distant stars.
I will take back my name.